Paul Revere is about to ride towards Lexington along with 3 other colonial messengers to warn the Minutemen about the impeding British army marching towards them. There were over 40 messengers sent out to warn the other nearby towns about the British. A group of British scouts were sent ahead of the rest to cut off the messengers, and they successfully captured Paul and his group, but the others managed to get away and warn Lexington. A colonist regiment stood at Lexington commanded by the militia captain John Parker. Captain Parker told them, "Stand your ground, don't fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have a war, let it begin here." After the British fired the first shot, the colonists scattered and began to retreat. The British had gathered the colonists' munitions that were stored in Lexington. The British began their march back to Boston, but the colonists regrouped and caught up to the British. The colonists cut off the British marks and began to fire upon them along the road. As the fight went on, more and more colonists were able to regroup, and soon the British had been run back to Boston.
Slaves were also involved during the American Revolution. Some slaves were used to fight battles for their owners. Many slaves would fight for their freedom. For example, they fought at the Battle of Lexington and Concord and Bunker Hill. Some of the officers in the army, such as Alexander Hamilton and John Lawrence, wanted to give them that chance and created several groups of slaves that would fight with the Patriots in exchange for their freedom. Not all of the slaves fought for their freedom. Other slaves played different roles, such as farmers, cooks, waiters, or artisans. Both the British and the colonists wanted the slaves, and they would try to bribe them with their freedom. The colonists figured that if they did not let the slaves help them, then the British would bribe them. After the Revolutionary War ended, slavery started to decline, and laws were passed outlawing slavery.
200 British forces under the command of Major General William Howe and Brigadier General Robert Piggott landed on the Charleston Peninsula, then marched to Breed's Hill with musket fire, throwing the British into retreat. The American forces learned that the British were planning on taking over the hills around Boston in order to gain a tactical advantage because it overlooks Boston. As a result of this information, the Americans secretly moved their troops onto Bunker Hill. Prescott's men were now low on ammunition, though, and when the Redcoats went up the hill for a third time, they reached the redoubt and engaged the Americans in hand-to-hand combat. The outnumbered Americans were forced to retreat by the end of the engagement. They built up fortifications during the night and prepared for battle. Even though the colonists lost the hill, the British still suffered too many casualties and had to retreat from Boston.
Yeah.